Hey guys. So I was supposed to post a podcast this morning, but I have run out of interviews. And so rather than just like foregoing the week, which is what I've done in the past, I wanted to actually come on here and chat. So welcome to the little playhouse. Perhaps this will be a new little series. I'm Hannah Octavia, a 20-something exploring the question, how do people really figure out their careers, their goals, and their lives? This is a podcast about stories worth sharing, the wins, the setbacks, and everything in between. My hopes is that each episode leaves you inspired, motivated, and reminded that every story is different, and that's what makes it beautiful. My brother is going off on a very exciting adventure in 2 weeks, I think. And he's requested a hat, so that is what I'm currently creating at the moment. So I thought I would knit and chat. But anyways, hello everyone, welcome back to Seasoned Professional. Of course, it is a little bit of a different setup today, but I'm kind of here for it. I'm kind of here for the slightly slower pace. Today was absolutely full on, and yeah, I just feel like I need to take a breath. Maybe we should all do that together. Maybe we just need to take a breath. It's amazing how much breathing actually helps. I always kind of poo-pooed it for the longest time. Oh no, I don't need to breathe. But it actually helps so much in calming the system down. Anyways, a little history on this. This is my childhood little playhouse. It has a really cool double Dutch door, so this bit swings open, so you can have half closed, half open. Anyway, my dad made this for us years ago when my brother and I were little kids, and it was always so fun playing in here. And I vividly remember back in the day when everyone had house phones, my brother and I would be in this little playhouse dialing our neighbor an incessant amount, being can you play with us, can you play with us? And she was quite a few years older than us, so I can imagine for her it was these little children always wanting to play with me. It's I've got a life. I have other things to do. But anywho, I just got back from a walk, and I've been having a lot of, I feel like I've been growing mentally quite a bit recently. I think one of the main things is just realizing how full on adulthood is. And I'm sure, my parents watching are gonna be laughing at this. I'm sure any adult is going to be chuckling to themselves because they've known all along. But truly, it is so full on. And I don't know why per se I'm having this realization now when theoretically things should be easier. I'm living with my parents. Theoretically, there's less to do in terms of maintenance of the house. So it should be easier, but I'm just finding life to be so overwhelming at the moment. And it's probably a combination of things of, commuting into Toronto and working and doing the podcast, and then also having a long distance relationship, and then living with family. There's a lot of layers at the moment, which are probably adding to my state of absolute chaos in my mind. But it's just I don't know, it's something that I've been sitting with. And then I put myself into the future, and I'm oh my gosh, if I can't manage this now, how on earth am I going to manage children and, true responsibilities of maintaining a household and earning an income to support myself and my family. It just feels so much. And I try not to get ahead of myself because, I've listened to so many podcasts over the years on parenting, and the one thing that they always say is you're never ready to have kids, but your capacity for it expands. When you have one child, the one child is hard, but then once you have your second child, the one child becomes easy. And I'm hoping that makes sense. I think it's just that ability to, your capacity to manage things just expands. And I think putting myself into that headspace, it feels really overwhelming because I'm not there yet. But that's what I like to do. I like to put myself in situations where I feel utterly overwhelmed and don't know what to do with myself. So, yeah. And then I guess the other thing that like I've really been thinking about a lot is just like teaching, you know? If you have been a long-time listener of the podcast, you know that I have had a very conflicting relationship with the career that I pursued as a teacher. It's like I have a love-hate relationship with it. So again, if you have been listening for a while, you will know that kind of the idea behind this podcast came about because I was so conflicted about whether or not I wanted to continue with teaching. And it's like, I've spoken about this before, but some days it's so wonderful that I could burst into tears. And then other days I could burst into tears for a fully different reason. So it's very confusing in my head. Like I don't know, I was talking to my, I guess, fiance, actually not my boyfriend, about this. And he's like, you know, you very much, you as in me, Hannah, need to have like a career that means something. And so I think that's why on many levels teaching does work for me, but it is just a constant juggle. And it's, you know, I think it's one of those careers where you are constantly being humbled. You are constantly having to check yourself and, you know, practice patience and understanding, all while trying to like manage a class of emotions. And it's a lot. And I think like people do speak about this, but I think until you experience it, like you can prepare someone all you want, but until you experience for yourself, like you're really not going to have a full grasp of it. So I've just been finding that like, you know, I'll have a day of work and I'll come home and I'll be absolutely like manic. And I asked ChatGPT the other day, like, what is this? Like, why do I come home from teaching and feel like I'm literally going to explode from energy when theoretically I should be out of energy by this time, by this point in the day? And the whole concept was that because I am having to be like so rigid and so on top of everything and so like, you know, organized and detailed and like controlled through the day, when I get home, it's like I literally have to lose my mind a little bit before I can like recenter myself. And it makes perfect sense. Sometimes it's a lot to manage, and I think for the people around me, sometimes the energy can be a lot to manage. But it's just one of those things that like I never even considered when going into this profession, is like the ability that you are so on for every single moment of the day, and then the second that you leave, it's like this like huge rush of relief. But then my fear is like later in life when I have kids and stuff, it's like, well, when am I going to have that relief, like that rush of relief, you know? Because then it'll just be kids and you know, life. And I should have put a forewarning on this if you didn't want to hear me complain. But I don't know, I've always loved podcasts, and I've been really liking the ones where like I hear about people's actual life and like how they're feeling and like their opinions on stuff. So not that anyone asked for this per se, but at this moment in my life, you know, I'm trying to stay consistent with the podcast. And, you know, with my conversation with Charlie Follows, which I will link down below, she mentioned that like consistency can look different over your lifetime. You know, it doesn't have to be posting every single week a different guest to be consistent. Like it could be, you know, posting as often as I can and then supplementing with like solo episodes, which as much as like I would rather have guests, currently it's just been a lot to juggle. And yeah, I was looking through my my camera roll, and my very first maybe it's the second interview I ever did, and was back in May of 2024, which is crazy to think. And you know, I have to remind myself, like, I started filming in May of 2024, or perhaps even earlier in that year, and I didn't release it until October 13th of 2024. So I really did build up quite a backlog, and I think that's been something that I've been struggling with a little bit, is like the second that you get behind, or like you don't have that consistent inflow of like scheduled guests, it's kind of hard to like maintain things. But with all that being said, I do have some hopefully potential, there's like some penciled in dates for some guests coming up, and I'm very excited for those conversations. So I'm hoping that they will come to fruition. And then I've got a in-person event actually, which will be very exciting. And then this past week, I actually went out and did some podcast hunting in the wild. And what I mean by that is I went to TIFF in Toronto and saw a film there that it was a documentary, and I was interested in interviewing the woman who the documentary was based on. And after the film, you know, there was like a Q&A after, and I was hyping myself up, being like, you know, I'm gonna ask her a question. And I was like going through all the questions in my head, and then it was a very short Q&A, so I didn't get a chance to ask the question. You know, it was gonna be all profound and wonderful, and she was just gonna come on my podcast, and it was gonna be great. Anywho, didn't get a chance to do that. So I decided to line up and meet her. And unfortunately, I didn't have a book because, you know, the documentary was adapted from her memoir. And I don't know, like, I'm like reflecting on it now. And because I went up to her and I was like, hey, you know, I'm gonna shoot my shot right now, and I am gonna ask you to come on my podcast. And in the moment, she was quite like, she seemed like off-put by it. And I will admit I was hurt in the moment. But I have taken some time to reflect, and I don't know, maybe I did the wrong thing. You know, like maybe, as much as I would probably continue to shoot my shot, because like in this kind of endeavor, when you have a small audience, you kind of do have to put yourself out there in uncomfortable situations. But I also have to remember, like, this woman just put herself out there. You know, she just showed her documentary to a room full of strangers. She just had a Q&A, and she just spoke to all these people. Like, it probably makes sense that she wouldn't want to be asked to come on a podcast right in that moment. And so, I don't know, it's just funny to like reflect on it. And, you know, she mentioned that I could like follow up in an email, and I don't know, I might, but I also just feel like a little bit uncomfortable now that is kind of what happened, because it's always just like weird. I don't know, no matter how long you've been doing this, it feels uncomfy to be denied in some way, even though in reality nothing was denied of me. I simply had a terrible time of when I asked her to do something. And, you know, listeners, I hope that you're enjoying these little chatty sessions, because I personally find them quite cathartic. You might be thinking to yourself, this is terrible, turn it off. And you know what? You've got the power to do that. If you want to turn it off, you can turn it off. But if you're enjoying it, please do give me a follow. And maybe you're even enjoying the natural sounds of nature. I've had like 4 bumblebees flying immediately above my head this entire time. And I can slowly feel the raindrops coming down. But it's kind of really lovely. It's really soothing. And I should probably bring my phone a little bit closer so it doesn't get soaking wet. And then we can finish our conversation, then we can get on with our night. Is that a good idea? Okay, let's do that. I'm just gonna bring you a little closer because it is raining. Oh no. But anyways, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share. I think actually the last thing I'm gonna do before I sign off for the evening, and you know, again, I'm hoping that you're gathering something from my nonsense that I am speaking about. Maybe if like you guys enjoy this, I will actually come prepared with some topics, because in my actual podcasts, I just go off script. Like, there is no script. I do my research beforehand, so I have like a backlog of who I'm speaking to in my brain, but I don't actually have questions beforehand or anything. But in this case, because I have no one to like, you know, toss ideas around with, and like when I'm talking to someone, I can kind of like steer the ship in a certain sense, but with myself, I'm just like a train of thought at the moment. And that could be terrible to listen to. So, you know, leave your comments below. But yeah, maybe I will come up with some actual topics, because what I was actually thinking is I think it would be interesting for me to kind of interview myself. So the same way that I interview my guests, and kind of bring you through my career story. Not that I have reached any stage of success, which is the main difference between myself and my guests, but I feel like it could give some good insight into kind of like my career story. And yeah. And then the next few weeks. So, because I did not, you know what? I'm not even gonna blame myself. I was about to say like because I didn't prepare adequately, but I am, Hannah, I'm trying to give you grace right now. You're doing the best you can. Anyways, the next few weeks, we are going to be releasing some older episodes, and it's just going to be a chance to kind of like revisit the past conversations that I've had, which I'm actually quite excited about, because I have not listened to those conversations since they went out. So for some of them, that is nearly 2 years ago, which is crazy to think about. So I'm very, very excited to share those once again. And over on my Instagram, Seasoned Professional Pod, you can find kind of like a little blurb of what to expect the next coming weeks, because there's a bunch of family stuff happening over the next few weeks, and I want to prepare myself in the best way possible, kind of like put everything out there, and then I can be a little bit more hands off for the next few weeks, because we have a very exciting wedding coming up, which is exciting for numerous reasons. The first reason is because of who it is. It is so yeah, that's very exciting. I'm not getting married. It was funny. I was off for one day at school, and my kids were like, "Did you get married? Did you get married?" If I was getting married, I would take off more than one day of school, children. No, I was not married. I did not get married. But anyway, I'm also in the bridal party, which is very exciting. And it's also the first wedding I've ever been to. So that's like a 3 for 3 exciting event. My parents are coming. I get to see my fiance. Wait, that should have been the most exciting thing, actually. I haven't seen my fiance since we got engaged in February. And honestly, I bet someone will hear that and be like, how on earth have you not like spoken about this? Have you not like screamed from the rooftops, gone crazy without having your fiance here? And I will say, so did I just lose my train of thought there? Anyway, let me just finish up my thought. So yes, next few weeks are going to be some reruns of things, and then hopefully we'll be back on track with my guest interviews. Anywho, hi.
Just gonna go get a few things.
From where?
Boy.
Okay.
What?
I said okay.
You can turn the light on there too if you want.
Okay. Love you.
Yeah.
Bye. That was my father. Anywho, fiance. So the lovely Clayton has been in England since, so I came home in December. He came home for Christmas for 2 weeks, and then we were apart for about 6 weeks. I saw him in mid-February, and then it is currently May 19th, and then I will see him at the end of May. So for some context, this is not our first time doing long distance. The very first year we were together, we did long distance. So we met in the summer of June 2018, June. Yeah, like June 2018 is when we met. It's actually quite a funny story. Maybe I'll tell that another time. But anyways, so yeah, June 2018, I remember thinking to myself, oh, he'll be a great summer fling. Like, this is going to be perfect, you know? Like, what a fun little boy toy for me to have for the summer kind of thing. Ew, I can't believe I just said boy toy. Apologies. Anyways, and because I knew he was going to law school in England in September. So I was like, whatever, this is going to be like a short-term thing. It'll be fun, whatever. Anyway, we ended up staying in contact that whole time. I ended up going to see him that winter. And I remember being at the airport being like, oh my gosh, I've known this guy for like 2 months. Like, am I crazy to be flying across the world to go and see him? Anyways, some might say yes. But yeah, so that first year was long distance. Then, life happened. And then a few years passed and we were doing long distance again because I graduated from university in 2022 and I thought to myself, Hannah, we need to go traveling. We need to go explore. We need to go teach in England. And Clayton, I'm doing it whether you want me to or not. So we then spent 6 months apart where I was in Brighton and it was amazing, incredible. Highly recommend living alone. It is a fantastic experience. There were definitely times when I was lonely, but overall, living by yourself is the most beautiful thing in the world. So anyway, so that was 6 months apart. Then he moved over to England. We were living together for, I believe, just under 2 years. And then he is doing a final 6 months now, currently. And, we kind of like went back and forth about this. My mother has a lot to say about this. She's like, why isn't he here? Why isn't he here? You guys got to get your life sorted out. And I understand where she's coming from, but at the end of the day, he's lived for himself. He's lived with himself like very briefly before, but in most situations, he's always had roommates. So I'm like, you know what, Clyde, like you take this time, have like the most beautiful 6 months, really embrace living alone because, we're engaged now. If all goes well, our future is going to be, he won't be living alone anymore and neither will I. And I think that is so exciting in so many ways, but I think, it's also saying goodbye to this other portion of your life where you could do whatever you wanted, make a mess and then clean it up later. And it's also allowing him to like really put himself out there in terms of like friendships and work and just really embrace the experience of living over there because I think, it's a different thing when you have a partner and when you have someone, your best friend that you can just rely on, always there. And, when he eventually moved over to England, I definitely stopped being as outgoing in some situations. And that's not that's not on him or anything. It was just, I had my comfort there, so I didn't have to force myself out of my comfort zone as much. And, he tells me all about his wonderful work events and birthday parties that he's been to. And, we made beautiful friends with this boy that I nannied for, his family. They are one of our dearest friends now, and they have just taken him in, and every weekend they spend together. And I feel so proud of the person that he's become, having this time apart. And I think in many ways I've grown a lot as well. I've been able to focus on teaching a little bit more. I've been able to focus on getting into a really solid routine here, and waking up early, doing my workout, really kind of prioritizing myself. And again, it's not to say that either of us are not prioritizing a relationship. It's just in this moment in time, for frankly the next few weeks only, we're just really embracing this time apart. So if you ever think oh gosh, I could never do long distance, I could never do this, I don't know. Him and I, we've been through so much together that at this point, I love him so dearly that I want this adventure for him, and it makes me happy seeing him happy. And, there'll be times in the future to do all the things that one does in a relationship, and being close to each other, and those are all wonderful things that we can look forward to again. Is that thunder? Anywho, I feel much lighter now. I still have an absolutely pounding headache, and if you are watching the video version, my eye has been swollen all day because I'm incredibly allergic to cats. But I insist on having a cat in my bed at night. Not insist, but if he's gonna come and cuddle with me, I'm not gonna kick him out. So anyway, I've had a red eye all day, and I had a teaching observation today, and I was oh my gosh, why do I need to have a swollen eye for the one day when I semi want to be put together? But anyway, what can you do? I try my best. What can you do? Anywho, how are you guys doing? I hope that you've been having a lovely day, morning, afternoon, night, whenever it is that you're listening. And if you could take a moment to subscribe to this channel, that would mean the absolute world to me. My last piece of tidbit, I suppose, is that I have really been embracing the stage of this business. As much as I want it to grow exponentially, I also feel in a place right now where I can maintain this. I'm gonna keep doing this because I love it. And your support, every so often I'll go on Spotify and I'll see oh, there's been one more review, and it's just such a beautiful thing to see that it's speaking to some people. And if I'm speaking to you, then it would mean the absolute world for me, for you to follow and subscribe and do all the things. Anyways, I'm gonna leave you and love you and talk to you next week. And this is the progress of the hat so far. It does look rather large, but I've been measuring it nearly constantly, and all my brother says is, it's too small. And then I proceed to say, it's because the cord's still in it, Jacob. It'll be fine. Anyway, Jacob is not his name. It technically is his name, but I have never in my 27 years of life called him Jacob. He will always be Jay. And he's only Jay to me. I think I wanted to name him Jay when he was born. Anywho, have a wonderful rest of your night, guys, and I will speak to you all very soon.
Will you read my mind? Your winds turn me on. Why is this so hard? Be a functioning